So two major cases challenging rifle bans and magazine bans just went in front of the Supreme Court, and these cases were not alone at conference. Multiple other rifle and magazine ban challenges lined up for that same exact conference. That means that we could be looking at the perfect storm of Second Amendment cases all landing on the Supreme Court's desk at the same time. This is exactly the type of scenario that many justices have hinted that they wanted, or maybe they're waiting for. So let's break down what is happening and why this could finally force the Supreme Court to answer a critical question. Are AR-15s and magazines protected by the Second Amendment? Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe. You can also click the like button that just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content and it shares it more to you and then also to other people as well that potentially have similar interests. I also want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to self-defense protection, in my opinion, AOR is in a league of their own. They're backed by an actual law firm, the Attorneys for Freedom, and they're always trying to expand upon their benefits to give you as much as possible as a member. One of the new things that they added is they are guaranteeing 4 attorneys for your self-defense case. So if you're interested in this type of legal protection, check them out using the link down below. And if you use my code ARMSCHOLAR, you can get $25 off of your sign-up fee. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you will know that the Supreme Court has been avoiding rifle and magazine ban cases for many years. The core question, however, that they need to address is very simple. Does the Second Amendment protect common semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s and then also standard capacity magazines? Now, on this topic, lower courts are deeply divided and they have issued a varying, scope of decisions. Some say that these type of items are protected arms. Others say that they are too militaristic in nature, that they're too useful in military service and therefore are not protected. And then some say that they are still protected arms, but they can be banned or restricted anyway because they are too dangerous and unusual. And that confusion is exactly what these cases are asking for the Supreme Court to fix. Well, now multiple rifle and magazine ban cases just went to the Supreme Court at the same conference. Now, the first key case that I want to talk about is Vermontes versus Cook County. That case challenges Cook County's ban on so-called assault weapons, which includes AR-15s and dozens of other commonly owned rifles. The plaintiffs in this case argue that these rifles are in common use and therefore protected under Heller-Bruen and the Second Amendment. They are asking for the Supreme Court to finally say once and for all that states, counties, and cities cannot just simply outright ban an entire class of commonly owned firearms like AR-15s. The second key case is Duncan versus Bonta, and that deals with California's magazine ban. This is the case that has already previously went to the Supreme Court. It was granted, vacated, and remanded back down to the lower courts after the Supreme Court issued their Bruen ruling, and it's now back in front of the Supreme Court once again asking for them to look at magazine bans and finally address this question because the lower courts are simply not following the Bruen framework. Now, here's what's currently going on in these cases. Both Vermontes and Duncan have been relisted again instead of just being denied. That means that the justices have actively discussed them, maybe behind closed doors, and recently the court relisted them once again to go to the February 20th conference. So that, just happened. But here's the key point. These two cases weren't the only Second Amendment cases at that conference, which is a big deal for these issues going forward. Other rifle and magazine ban challenges from different states and circuit courts were also considered at the same time. That kind of creates, something very significant that we haven't really seen yet, which is multiple cases on the same constitutional question landing together in front of the Supreme Court at the same conference. And that potentially is a big deal because this is exactly what many Supreme Court justices maybe have suggested that they are waiting for. Instead of taking one isolated case from one state or one city, the court can now look at multiple bans, multiple circuit courts, multiple states, different conflicting rulings, and they can kind of do that all at once. That allows the court to resolve the issue nationally instead of kind of doing a piecemeal decision. It also avoids the criticism that maybe, one of these cases is the wrong vehicle and just it doesn't have the proper procedure to make its way to the Supreme Court. So they can address, a whole slew of cases dealing with a similar issue and cure a lot of those issues. This is now shaping up as a coordinated moment where the court can finally answer, are AR-15s protected? Are magazine bans constitutional? Are magazines protected? And can states, cities, and counties just outright ban these items? Now, one thing that we're going to be looking for once again is if these cases are relisted after this conference. Now, relists are just simply not random. Historically, cases that are relisted at least once have a much higher chance of being granted review, but cases that are relisted many times can kind of go either way. Sometimes multiple relists indicates that maybe a denial is coming in the case, but maybe also with a dissent. But sometimes it means that the court is lining up cases together for a coordinated grant, or they're just waiting for a specific case to make its way to them. That's kind of what makes this moment very critical and important, and that we need to keep our eyes on. It may not be that they just want to look at Vermontes or Duncan. Maybe they're waiting for another case, or maybe they wanted to wait for all of these cases to link up once, they kind of all hit the same conference. It may be about grouping all of these rifle and magazine ban cases together, or it may be that they simply want to delay these cases while they're waiting for another case to make its way to them, maybe something out of the 7th Circuit, 9th Circuit, or the 3rd Circuit. So where does this currently leave us? Well, now we have Vermontes and Duncan, which were heard at the February 20th conference, along with multiple other rifle and magazine ban challenges. And again, those all linked up at the same conference. This creates kind of the perfect storm of cases all focused on the same constitutional question revolving around rifle bans and magazine bans. And if the court grants even one of those cases, or maybe even several of them together, we may finally get a definitive ruling on rifle bans and magazine bans nationwide. So after years of delay, this could be the moment the court finally addresses these issues. Maybe they can no longer avoid it, or maybe they will finally fulfill that promise that they're going to address this type of rifle ban issue in a term or two. So now we will be watching for the order list that's going to be coming next week and see what happens there. There are a lot of options that the Supreme Court could do with these cases, but the best case scenario is that at least one of these cases, the rifle ban or magazine bans, are granted review. The really best case scenario is that they're all granted review together and they're going to be considered together. The worst case scenario, of course, is that all of these cases are denied, and on the order list, we find that all of them were rejected. If that happens, it would just show that the Supreme Court is still unwilling to review this issue and that they're not concerned about fulfilling that promise that they made, that they will address these types of rifle bans in a term or two. So that's what's currently going on. We're going to be watching for what happens after this conference in the order list. And as we get more information, as it develops more, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm. It just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it to you and more people. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.